You're tuned into the Zelos podcast. I'm your host, Rocky Snyder, and this week, Justin Sua is in the house with me. He's all about process and development with the Tampa Bay Rays, but he's been with the Boston Red Sox, the Cleveland Browns, military special elites, and he's going to share a lot about that. But before we get underway, Setanta College is the place to go for a Master's of Science in Applied Sports Biomechanics and Movement Science. There's also a program for Applied Sport and Exercise Psychology. And there's also a Master's of Science in Performance Coaching, or perhaps you'd like sports injury and return to performance management. Either way, SetantaCollege.com is the place to go, and you can get 10% off your tuition with the code RS10, RS10. Let them know that you heard it on Zelos. In the meantime, subscribe to the show, and here we go. Well, we're just going to dive right in. Justin, thank you for joining me on the Zelos podcast. I'm thrilled to have you on.
Thanks so much for having me. Looking forward to this conversation.
Well, I have been delving for a long while into the aspects of mental performance, of helping people obviously change their lives, but not just from a physical realm, but from a mental, emotional realm. And I'm so thrilled to see over the past decade or so more of this emerging into the world of professional sports. I mean, we've heard of visualization coaches and meditation coaches, but to actually consider beyond sports psychology, but to get to the nitty gritty. I mean, that's what you're doing, right? Tell me a little bit about. Let's start with your superhero origin story, as I call it. Like, where did Justin come from?
Yeah, great. I like that question. The superhero origin story. Who was it? Steve Jobs, who said that you can only connect the dots looking back. And so it's interesting, just like any of us, some of us couldn't fathom where we'd end up with all the doors that closed and all the doors that were open and all the ones that we had to kick open. Same for myself as well, where I born and raised from my father is an immigrant from the island of American Samoa. My mom is a Mexican American, didn't graduate, or she graduated high school, but didn't go to college. And from a young child, we were raised thinking, believing, taught, swing for the fences. Swing for the fences. You can do anything that you want. So my father, having never played baseball in high school, went on to get signed with the Los Angeles Dodgers and played professional baseball. My mom, who didn't have an MBA in business, went on to be a vice president of a multi-million-dollar company. And so we were raised with parents to say, go for it. Go for it. There's not one cookie cutter way to get places, and you can do it. So I decided I too wanted to be a professional baseball player. Didn't end up working out. I got my bachelor's degree in broadcast journalism. I said, you know what? I want to be a sports broadcaster. That didn't work out. And I went into teaching high school, and I loved it. I wanted to do that for the rest of my life. That didn't work out. And so I got my degree in sports psychology and thought, you know what? I'm going to focus on young kids and families. And that led to the military, and that led to IMG Academy, which led to the Red Sox, Browns, Rays, Google, Special Forces, NHL, and here we are having this conversation. So I know it's a quick ascension. Like, long story short, it was a wild, windy road, and I look forward to what's ahead.
But you picked up something from every experience. That's what my imagination is telling me right now. It's what my heart's telling me, is that you learned some tools, you took them on, you applied them with other things, and you just led down the path. But there's moments where we all have self-doubt. It's part of us. It's that voice inside our head that we're not going to get rid of. But nonetheless, you find a way to not listen to that voice often enough to put you where you are today. Is that what you do with athletes? I mean, give me a little synopsis of working with the Rays or the Sox or the Browns, or for that matter, Special Forces. What is it, if you could give me the elevator pitch, so to speak? What is that you do?
So essentially, you hit the nail on the head. Anyone who performs at a high level, or any level for that matter, we have that chatter that goes on in our mind. We have those thoughts that you think to yourself, who am I to do this? How do I slow the game down? How do I build confidence? Why we don't only compare ourselves to other people, but we compare ourselves to our old self. And so my job is to produce a generative conversation, not a guru to come in and tell you how to think or what to think, or my 5 steps to building confidence. It's basically to have a situation where you can build a relationship with somebody who can think out loud. and they talk about their situation, and they talk about the decisions they have to tackle, and be able, because we're all biased, we're clouded by our own negativity or our own blind spots, and be able to sit and say, hey, well, you just said this, well, have you thought about this, or have you ever disagreed with that, to be able to help them take a look at their beliefs and poke holes in their assumptions, poke holes in these beliefs that they have, to be able to see a little bit more clearly, to think a little bit more clearly. And so some of it is in sports psychology, some of it is less prescriptions and more providing perspective. And so that's where it is, being able to work with a group of people who are trying to be the best in the world. And when you're in that level, it's lonely. You're always wondering, hey, what do you want from me? Everyone wants to pour into them. Everyone wants to give them advice. And my role is to not pour in necessarily, but to pull out their origin stories, pull out their tools, pull out what works for them, and the things that they know they need to do that, but maybe it's been buried with the cloud of stress and the cloud of adversity, that they need to get back to the basic first principles. And so that's it for the one-on-ones. And there's a lot of other things that we do, but that's essentially the gist of it.
So how do you pull that out? Is it by expressing your own vulnerability? Is it by sharing your experiences and your beliefs? How do you get that level of trust for them to feel at home, to feel like I can confide and receive comfort or gain confidence? How do you do it?
I think that's a really good question. I think that is the key to start off with. Building a relationship so strong you bear the weight of truth. So one thing I do have is the anti-sales pitch. I am not trying to convince anybody. If I have to convince you, hey, talk to me, we're not going to work together. Like, we're just not a good fit. There's too much time to be wasted. And I know I'm not for everybody. I might be a terrible person to talk to. You go talk to somebody else, or talk to nobody. Talk to your peers, talk to your friends, talk to your coach, I try to create an environment to whoever you need to connect with to help you with this decision making. Go connect with that person. Many times it's not with me, and I'm completely okay with that. Now, to answer that question, how do I build a relationship where they can talk to me? There's a little bit of, yes, there's empathy involved in there. Yes, there's vulnerability involved in there. But I think the main component is curiosity. Sincerely curious, to be not in a judgmental tone, but to look at a leader in the face who's been doing this for a very long time and ask them, hey, what are you working on? Oh, I'm working on this. Okay, what decision, what considerations are you taking? Oh, I'm taking this, this, and this. Just literally just asking those types of questions. What are you not good at? Who do you need to have a hard conversation with? What are some things that you're worried about right now? Just sincerely asking those questions and just seeing where it goes from there. And then it's not just a emotional trauma dump onto me. Hey, but then we focus on, okay, what are you going to do about it? Because a lot of executives, a lot of military, a lot of professional athletes, there's a lot going on. And you feel sometimes that you're in the passenger seat when adversity strikes. We just want to put these men and women back in the driver's seat to be able to say, okay, this is my situation, and good or bad, and this is what I'm going to do about it. Another thing as well is I want to clarify, I don't just work with people who have problems. Like, a lot of people think, oh, something's wrong with me, I need to talk to Justin. It's like, no, 90% of the people I work with, they're the best in the world. They're really good at what they do. They are rolling right now. And they do weekly check-ins or every other week check-ins just to assess, okay, how are we at? Where are we going? Take a temperature of their decision-making, of their relationships, of their environment, and they keep going. I very rarely get people, I'm struggling, Justin, we need to talk. I don't really get that very much.
Well, you beat me to the punch there, because I was thinking that you're probably not working with just athletes that are in a hitting or a pitching slump in any way. So I'm glad you covered that. For me, professionally speaking, I see a lot of people that are suffering from some chronic pain issues. And what I've found over the years is that if we go back in time and find out what happened before this began happening, we're going to find some type of root cause. For instance, maybe they twisted their knee while skiing on the slopes about 15 years ago, and it was kind of something awful. They didn't need surgery, they didn't go to physical therapy or anything like that,
But what their brain did is create a new belief around that knee. And there wasn't a high sense of trust. There was trepidation, there was fear, so that they changed the way in which their physical body began moving. And that required other areas to take on a little bit more work to support the insecure knee, so to speak. Whatever the belief was, it began to impact their entire existence until 15 years later, their lower back is giving them tremendous trouble. So we could give them a whole bunch of low back problems and deal with the symptom of pain. But unless we went back and understood where this belief came from, what was the root cause, we're probably not going to get as far in relieving and getting them to progress beyond that. And the amazing thing is that I've come to realize that is the exact same way in which our mental, our emotional body treats things too. There was something in our earlier life that created a belief around which we have created a reality. Am I on the same track? I mean, is that what we're talking about, beliefs?
Absolutely. That is definitely an aspect of the narrative, the story. We talk often about the story we tell ourselves. What is your story around failure? What is your relationship around success? Where did that come from? Who gave that to you? Who helped you design that? And to be able to explore it. Richard Thaler, who is a renowned researcher and economist, who says beliefs are hypotheses to be tested, not treasures to be guarded. And when I sit with somebody, a lot of times I'll find out what their beliefs are. You'll hear it, you can listen to it. And then you understand, just like you said, you go back and you say, okay, where did this story come from? And then you start to push holes in it. Do you still believe that? Does that story still serve you? And if it does not, then it's learning how to design and to build and construct a new story, a new belief, a new identity, which is, as you know, very difficult, especially if it's rock solid. And then you help them navigate all of that, or learn how to basically turn the volume down of this old story that's holding them back. And so, yes, I have seen that many times. When I was with the military, the big army in Fort Sam Houston, one of the units I worked with was the Warriors in Transition, also known as the Wounded Warriors, as some outside the Army see. And these are soldiers who now don't have legs. They don't have arms. Their lives have been changed forever. They went from super athletic, superhuman, to doing what they love, to now they literally cannot walk, or will have prosthetic arms for the rest of their lives. And so they have to create new stories, new goals, new mental behaviors to be able to thrive, not just survive their situation, but thrive. And it all starts with the stories that they're telling themselves. And I think that's a really great point that you just brought up.
Well, you also bring up that it's not a cookie cutter approach, that we are unique in ourselves, even though we're all human. We have different ways in which we approach different concepts that or constructs that we have. So one way is not going to be the way. And in fact, changing someone's belief or going back is just one aspect, you say. So what other aspects do you take into consideration when working with athletes and warriors?
Oh my goodness, there are so many. When you're working with athletes, for example, you take into consideration playing time. Take into consideration how the roster construction, their contract, their families, the time of year, coming off injury, who is, if they're in the minor leagues, do we get a new trade above them? There are so many small things to take in consideration, and it's the combination of all these tiny internal, external, environmental things that add, relationship things that add up, that shape the beliefs, the actions, the emotions of a person. And so it's not just, oh, they're playing bad, let me give you tools of confidence. It's really pausing and saying, okay, let me just take a really good look at what is really going on. And then sometimes it's just saying nothing. It's understanding. I'll give you an example. There's a player who was struggling and he was going through a little bit of a slump. And it's a great player. And he comes up to me and he says, hey, I need a tool. I need some thinking modality. I need something to get me back, whether it be visualization, meditation. My mind's all over the place. I've been struggling. I know this player is really good. And it would have been easy easy to give him a tool, a journal activity, create a video for him, something, a self-talk mechanism. It could have been easy to give him something because he's struggling. And rather than do that, I decided, you know what? Let me just provide a perspective rather than a prescription. And we discussed, he's very analytical, big math guy. And I think he got his degree in finance. And I said, what did you learn about regression to the mean in your classes? He goes, well, essentially in the outlier, you're going to regress to the average. And I said, what do you feel about your current performance? Is this normal, or do you feel this is an outlier performance? And he goes, oh, it's definitely outlier. I said, well, so do you believe that you're going to eventually get back to where you're going to be? He goes, oh, I know I am. I said, okay, great. I believe that too. I don't think you need to do anything. Just that's sports. You're going to have ups. You're going to have downs. You're going to get back to the mean, get back to playing. And he took a deep breath. He goes, I needed that. I needed just to remember that. He goes, not that game, but a little bit later on, he struggles the next few games. And then all of a sudden, he just catches fire, ends up being right back where he's always been, right where he's comfortable. And the joke, he goes, regression to the mean, Justin, regression to the mean. I said, that's it, regression to the mean. And so the positions like mine, like, you're not the hero. You don't have to always provide a tool, a tip, and say, oh, I gave this guy this. Sometimes it's just providing perspective. You're okay. You're going to be fine. And then another guy in another situation, I wouldn't have responded that way. Maybe I do give something else or a different perspective or connect him to someone else. And so that is, these are all little considerations that I keep in mind. How old is the player? Is it a male? Is it a female? Is it an individual sport? Is it a team sport? What is the coach's relationship with the person? What's the parent's relationship with the person? All of these little things that I'm taking in consideration when I am talking to the person. What's their emotional state like? What's their mental state like? What's their physical state like? Where are we talking? Are people around us? Are we by ourselves? Is it in the middle of the dugout? Is it on the sideline? All of these things need to be taken into account for.
Does being present come naturally to you, or is that something that you have cultivated, nurtured over time? Because that's what you're telling me right now is from your perspective, as I see it, is you're working with some amazing athletes, warriors, the best of the best, as you say. So I could see there being some weight upon your shoulders if you really felt like, oh my gosh, they're looking for answers. But I see you kind of pushing that off to the side and just saying, I'm going to be present for this individual, and I'm going to listen, and I'm going to respond when need be. Is that what's going on?
Yeah, that's a really good way to put it. I think there needs to be a level of competence. As you know, when you work with the highest level of athlete, they will sniff out BS. They will test your circle of competence to see, does this person really know what they're doing in any domain? My domain, strength and conditioning coach, athletic trainer, sports scientist, coach. They're going, if you're going to work with me, you better know your stuff. And I'm going to test you to see if you know your stuff. And if I get to the edges of your circle of competence, these guys want someone, and women, like, you know what? I don't know, but let's figure this out. Let's connect you to someone who can help us figure this out. And so I think that's one part, is I don't feel pressure now. Early in my career, I think I did. I don't think I feel as much pressure now because I know that I'm not the sage on the stage. My job is to be the guide on the side. I'm not the guru with the answers. I don't need to pontificate. I don't need to fake like I know answers. I don't need to use big words and jargon to make it look like as a status signal to show how smart I am. Let's talk. We're humans, and let's pull out and find some answers together. And so, yeah, to your answer, you have to be present. It's kind of like elite performance, because if you're not present, you're going to get knocked out. You're going to miss it because things move so fast. And if I'm not present or I'm distracted, they're going to sniff it out. They're going to see, like, all right, this guy isn't locked in. And then word spreads around the company, around the organization. Like, yeah, don't go talk to Sua. He's not even locked in right now. And so that's that when you're surrounded by this environment, it keeps you on your toes.
And how do you practice staying locked in? Or is it a practice? I mean, what is it? For me, my attention varies greatly. From you say squirrel, I'm looking out the window kind of thing. How do you practice being present or staying locked in?
So what I don't do meditation. I don't do any like tools or anything that like practices it. I think it just really comes from tolerance of being in the trenches. I've had, dude, since 2008 until now, like I have hundreds and hundreds, I don't want to over exaggerate, maybe thousands of one-on-one conversations. And you're there, you're present, you care about the person who's in front of you, and you're locked in. And then the more you do it, you just have a tolerance for being able to have these conversations. And then you just get into the flow, really. Like you just get locked in where it doesn't feel effortful, it doesn't feel hard. You're just truly engaged and interested in helping this person. And so it doesn't feel like it's generating a lot of energy. It doesn't feel, for me at least, from my experience, I don't feel like I have to tell myself, hey, lock in. I'm just here, I'm just present. So I can't answer that. It's hard for me to answer. It's not a book. I didn't listen to a podcast. I think it just comes with just doing it for such a long time. For me, that's a terrible answer, but that's just how it works for me.
Now, how about this? Anecdotally, has there been an experience with someone that you've worked with where you feel like, I just, for whatever reason, I did not connect. I don't feel like I got through. I don't feel like I was effective in any way whatsoever. And then some days go by, weeks or years, you reconnect with that individual and say, that changed everything in my life. I am so happy about that. It more or less like you read the situation wrong. Has that ever happened?
Oh, reading all the time. That reading the situation wrong happens, or the opposite, where you're like, "Oh my goodness, that was amazing. That was a great conversation," and they're like, "That, yeah, I can't stand Justin." And it's like, "Oh, okay, like that happens all the time," and which is okay, and which is, again, like I said in the beginning, I'm not for everybody, and as long as I know, hey, I'm trying to do my best, and also too is understanding that I'm not the hero. Like it doesn't have to be me. I can feel if, hey, we're not connecting well, let me introduce you to somebody. Let's bring in a clinical psychologist. Let's bring in a meditation specialist. Like, let me introduce you to someone who's just you would connect way better with. That's my job, is to connect this person to the people who will best help the person, especially if it's not me. I think early on I tried to force me on people. Like it has to be me. Like I want it to be me. And now like, no, if you're really truly looking out for a person, you're going to connect them to somebody who you think is going to be a better fit. And I think people respect that. And I just think it's just better for the person. So I think now I'm way better at saying, no, I'm not good for you. Let's connect with somebody else, or we'll try it. But if it doesn't work out, we'll assess the relationship and be willing to pivot if I bring somebody else in to help you out with a very specific thing. And so that happens all the time.
So at our dinner table, we go around in the evening, especially when the kids were younger. Now they're kind of off on their own, but whenever we get together, we kind of share our day, but in the format of what was good, what was bad, what made you scratch your head and go, what the heck was that all about? And what was funny, and what you're looking forward to. Not that this is my default question for my guests, but I'm really curious. Like, what's the best and what's the least ideal about what you do?
The best of what I do is just being able to see somebody have their own epiphanies, to be able to tap into their strengths and find their answers and be able to lean into difficulty and those imposter syndrome voices and those fearful voices, and to be able to go into it, which is very common. I think a lot of people underestimate how that it happens to the best in the world. The best in the world have feelings of imposter syndrome. The best in the world have fears. The best in the world wonder if they're good enough, and if they're going to be found out, feel that they're frauds and they're not good enough. I've seen it. I've seen the best in the world express that, and then go to a press conference and then be extremely confident, or look very confident and poised, but underneath, we were just talking and they're like, I have no idea what I'm doing. I have no confidence. I'm terrible. I'm probably going to get released. And so that's the most refreshing thing, is to be able to see and like, wow, okay, we're all human and we're all trying to figure it out. The hardest thing is really when it does become hard to be able to absorb strong emotions. So when you're in a zero-sum game, high performance sports, you're going to absorb a lot of anger. You're going to absorb a lot of sadness. You're going to absorb a lot of strong negative emotions. And when I say absorb, you're in the room with someone who is hot. and they're angry, not at me, they're not at me, but they're angry about the situation. So if you're uncomfortable sitting and having very awkward, hard conversations, this is a very difficult job because there's a lot of conflict. There's a lot of lack of trust. There's a lot of it's very difficult. You see news articles that go out, and then you're talking to that person and just furious. And so broken chairs and windows and holes in walls. And so that's not easy for some people. You just get used to it over time. And also, I think the hardest part too is being away from the family. We travel a lot in this line of work. And with 3 kids of my own and my wife, it definitely takes a toll on the family sometimes.
That's interesting. You say absorb that the negativity, the anger, and so on, because I was thinking like a heat shield. When it gets hot, you just put the shield up so you don't have to absorb it, but you inevitably do. So how do you not embody that? How do you protect your own happiness, your own contentment?
Yeah, I think I used the wrong word there. I did use, it's not absorb, because I don't take it home. Like I don't take it home. It's not heavy. Like it doesn't affect me. Like I don't lose sleep over these situations. And so for me, yes, it is more of a deflection. It's more bring it out, let's hear it, and to be able to use curiosity to get down to, as you use, the root cause. What is it really? Allowing them to just get it out, express your frustration. Why are you mad here? And what else? This is this, and what else? This is, and what else? Okay, we got it all out. Okay, this is, you're frustrated with this, you're frustrated with this, you're frustrated with this. Okay, anything else? Oh, and this too. Okay, and this. And then after you put it on the table, you ask them, all right, yeah, this situation sucks. This is hard. Okay, what are you going to do about it? And that's where the magic starts to begin. It's like, okay, got it all out on the table. Let's go. Now let's focus on being in the driver's seat, because we got a game in about 2 hours, or we got a game tomorrow and the next day and the next year. We play the Chiefs on Sunday, or you have something coming up this week, or you have the Lakers next week, or you're playing against Rafael Nadal in 3 days. And so, or you're playing in the Masters in 2 days. All right, let's go. And so that's what it looks like.
And you're given those examples, so I imagine you've been in several situations like that where you've got these world-class competitors, they're reaching out to you, or you've been working with them, and so you're not exclusive, obviously, to the Rays at this point. You've worked with Google executives, other high-tech execs, you've worked with military elite, as well as NFL, MLB, and so on. But it really boils down to just one person talking to another, doesn't it? Or I mean, yes, there's levels of achievement, and no matter where that is, you're still dealing with the same things, aren't you? No matter who you're talking with.
Yeah, so these are the one-on-one in my business. So this is the one-on-one aspect of it, which is, I don't know, even the ratio. I wouldn't say, I'd say about 30%. It's not even the full what I do, the one-on-ones. Then I'm going and doing seminars for organizations. We have a group of executives or a group of the team, and then we do seminars on, okay, here's how to connect with your direct reports. I just went to an NHL hockey team and worked with their coaches on how to give feedback to players. Went to an NFL team of coaching staff, and we talked about how to help your players be mentally tough, giving them the tools. And so a lot of my work right now is working with groups of coaches, executives in kind of a classroom setting and teaching courses on, hey, these are the tools that I use. I'm going to give them to you so that you can use them with those who report to you. And so that's mainly the bulk of what I do. And the one-on-one is about 30%.
How much pushback do you get from those individuals, the coaching staff? I mean, their younger coaching staff has been around the mental focus, preparation, and so on. I'm not going to call it the old school boys, or the dinosaurs, but there are those that do not necessarily find what you do to potentially be what they need for their players. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, how do you address those coaches that live in the past? Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. It's interesting that you say that, because I actually, so I'll give you a couple of examples. So I once was working with a military group, and we'll just say the commanding officer was old school. We'll just say that he's old school. And he wouldn't let me talk to the soldiers because of this story he told himself of what I do. I was going to ask you like what I do, and then I was asking, what do you think I do? And a lot of, oh, well, you talk this and that. And so I asked him, he goes, oh, I'm never going to let you work with my soldiers because this is the military. We don't need none of this soft stuff. And I said, like, okay, you don't even know what I do. And he goes like, what do you mean? I said, okay, let's talk right now about what I do. Can we have a conversation about what I do? He goes, I don't have a lot of time. I'm like, fine. I said, do you mind if we do a one-on-one session just to show you? He goes, yeah. I said, how long have you been a military leader? He goes, 15 years, been on tour, all these things, been doing it for a long time, much, much older than me. And then I said, all right, what do you suck at? And he looked at me, he's like, what? I was like, what do you suck at? You're not God's gift to leadership. Like there's some things you're not good at. What is it? And he goes, well, I'm communication. I said, okay, in what ways, and how do you struggle with communication? And he goes, well, sometimes I just don't think, I don't convey what I'm thinking the best. I said, who told you that? He goes, oh, just the feedback that I get. I said, okay, what are you doing to work on that? He's just like, oh, I just get better at it. But how? Like specifically, how are you getting better? Just like this. And he goes, I don't know. I said, can I offer a suggestion? Let me introduce you to active listening. When you ask a question, listen closely, and then just ask a follow-up question based on what they say. Let's practice. So I showed him in a model, and then we just then I said, who can you practice that with? And he said, I can practice with this person. I said, awesome. I'll be back in 3 days. Let me know how it goes. And then we're done. And he goes, that's what you do? I was like, yeah, what do you think I do? This isn't we're about building strategies, getting better. Like, it's not about, oh, come in and give you all of my ideas. Like, do you want to get better at something? I'm here to support, if you want, ways to help you get better. So when I go into work with coaches, the first thing that I say is, because I've been with the Red Sox and with the Rays, and we have these quote unquote gurus come in to tell us how to build confidence or how to build a high performance culture. And we're like, you don't know us. You haven't spoke to other. Who are you to come into our building and to tell us how to be better coaches? Who are you to come in here and tell us how to be better leaders? You don't know us. And so I was not necessarily turned off, but I would see how all these coaches would be. I'm like, okay, when I go into organizations, I can't be like these presumptuous, overconfident gurus, slick storytelling people to come in like, and then take a selfie at the end of it and say, hey, I just worked with this organization. You need to come in with humility. And so when I come in, the first thing I say is, and I mean this, I've sat in your chairs and I've had people come in claiming that they're going to help me be better at my job. Who do you think you are? You don't know me. And so our guard would always go up. And so I said, it's understandable. I'll say this. I respect your experience and expertise. There are men and women in this room who can literally come up here and teach this better than me. My job isn't to come in here and dump, this is how you should do things. We're going to create an environment. I'm not going to pour into this group. We're going to pull out of this group. So here's the question. Today, we're talking about confidence. How do you as coaches build confidence in your players? And then we go. Or who in this room do you think is the best at building confidence in players? And they raise their hand. Oh, this guy. Okay, why? What is it about him? And I start writing things on the wall. And then I say, okay, or on the board rather. And then the guy goes, I ask him, hey, how do you build confidence? And he gives his strategies. Well, what about this? When it's over and you take a look at the ratio of who speaks versus who doesn't, they're talking way more than me. And all I'm doing is documenting the gold that's in that room. My job isn't to come here and just tell them how to, no. And so that is how I feel it's most authentic and most humble and most respectful to come in, not to dump all my knowledge, but to be able to pull out, what are you all doing already? Because you're really, really good at what you do. Let's put some language around it. Let's put some tools around it. I might sprinkle in some ideas on some people who I've seen, but this is social science. There's no gold. It's not linear. It just what worked with the Red Sox might not work with the Browns. What worked with the Browns may or may not work with the military. And so I have a chance, because I've been in so many different environments, to share with them, because they ask, hey, what did this organization do? What does that organization do around this topic? And I get to share some of those things. But that's how I do it. And I even say, yeah, like you don't have to believe any of this. I don't even believe, like, I can disagree with some of the things I say. It's all social science. And so you can poke holes in it, do what works for you. And so that's the way I approach it.
Sure. And you disarm the situation immediately because of that,
exactly.
right?
Exactly. One of the things I can't stand are gurus. They come in and I'm so smart. I have all the letters behind my name, and let me come in here and pontificate. It's like, you just be humble. Just know that if you come in and you just start telling us what to do without knowing the situation, you have a lot of blind spots. You have a lot, especially the more emphatic you are about it, the worse it is.
And do you have a mentor yourself?
I have so many. I have so many people that I learn from, that I grow from, that I disagree with. I don't believe in. I believe that mentors need to be situational. I think some people like, oh, this is my mentor for everything. It's like, no, like that person is really good at this. You're my mentor for that. But you have terrible relationships. This person is going to be my mentor for building relationships, but you're terrible at decision making. This person is going to be my role model for decision making. So I'll find people who are really good at certain things and will learn from them. And at the same time, whenever I read a book, I'll read great books, and then I'll ask myself the question: under what conditions is this person wrong, and what are they missing? What are they missing? Because the last thing I want as well is to get sucked in and be enamored by somebody. And I fall into like, now I believe everything they say. And I'm always, just because I like them, I want to be able to be clear thinking, think for myself, disagree, even with myself. Like there will be podcasts I listen to. I'm like, oh, you know what? Actually, I've adjusted my view on that. And so I have a lot of tons of mentors, and a lot of these people don't even realize they're my mentors.
Yeah. Okay, so in that setting where you're asking people who feel the most confident, and they raise their hand, but you've got the other people that aren't raising their hands, do you feel that in that environment, the tide rises all boats in there? I mean, I'm sure you're going to have some exceptions, meaning the people that feel confident aren't going to get much, while there's a few people that are lacking confidence that won't feel change. But I guess my question is do you focus on one group or the other, or just focus on the message that you're trying to convey?
No, I don't focus, and I don't ask the question. So maybe I said the question wrong. Who's confident and who's not? The question was, who do you feel is, I'm thinking about coaches, a room of coaches. Who do you feel in this room is good at instilling confidence in somebody? And it's not to be like, it's not to say, oh, we have our good ones and our bad ones. I'm looking for the outliers so we can learn from success. Success leaves clues. That's where it comes from.
Got it.
And so that's the reason why I asked that question. And then we have a conversation around principles, first principles about confidence or focus or feedback, and then strategies in order to get better at doing it. I always tell them, one of my things is like, I'm not a motivational speaker. I'm not going to come in and inspire people. That's not my job. Like, you could go watch a motivational video, like go watch a motivational movie. Some of these things might be inspiring, but we're here to give tactical, practical, evidence-based tools to help you get better at this thing. So our job, our hope is when this meeting is over, you go back out there and you have some ways to execute, some things you can actually do in order to build those relationships. And so that's essentially what it looks like. It's not really just speaking to different types of groups. It's just everyone's involved. Even if you're not very good at building confidence or instilling confidence in people, if the organization is safe, if there's psychological safety there, I'll ask the question, okay, for those who struggle to instill confidence in people, what makes it hard? What makes it difficult to instill confidence in the players? What does that look like? And then we have a discussion about that. Well, maybe you don't have a good relationship. Maybe they're a Hall of Fame player and you're a coach. What can you possibly teach this future Hall of Famer? That comes up a lot. And then we explore it. Okay, how has anybody else dealt with that? Well, once I coached Peyton Manning and this is how I did it. And so again, turning it towards them and letting them answer and modeling curiosity out of my end to really show them that they're the stars. They're the elite coaches. And I'm just here to facilitate a conversation.
Yeah, and I think you communicated that really well initially, and I think I misinterpreted what you were saying there. But you mentioned the word principles, and I'm curious, what principles are you talking about?
So principles could be a simple. So one thing is like, how do you discover principles? Principles are, I want to say universal truths, but it's not always true. They're simple little, for example, Lion King. This is how I teach it to my kids, principles with my kids. So have you seen the movie The Lion King?
Yes.
Okay,
yeah.
we've seen it. So that's why I like to use this one. Okay, so in one sentence, what's the message from Lion King in your opinion? There's not one answer, but what's the key principle or key message from the Lion King?
That deep inside we have the power to create great change.
Boom. There it is. Period. That's the principle. Deep inside, we have the power to create great change. Let's write it on the board. What else? When you remember who you are, you'll have more power to do what you do. Okay, let's write that. These are principles. One sentence, powerful heuristics to remember that might help, that we might forget. So principles. So what are the principles of confidence? One could be when you remember why you do what you do, you'll have more power to do it. The more prepared you are, the more confidence you may have. These are principles. They're not techniques or strategies. They're easy to digest, things that you could put in your pocket to remember, to keep in mind. Morgan Housel says, people don't remember books, they remember sentences. You remember messages, general principles that you can take away with you, that you can package and organize, and they're sticky. Now, the strategies are, okay, how? How do I build confidence? Okay, one way is to watch a video of yourself succeeding in the end, or to visualize yourself succeeding in the past. Sit down in this spot. Where are you going to do it? Grab a sheet of paper and write down all the reasons why you're going to succeed. Those are strategies. The principle is, when you remember your purpose, you'll have more power to do it. They're as you can see, one is actionable and practical, and one is more of a sticky, heuristic memory thing that you can remember, like a message to remember. And so that's what principles are. Principles to healing, principles to health, principles to a strong marriage. You're just simple, one-line things to remember that'll help you on your way.
Right on. I love it. Okay, everything you've been talking makes me feel like you are the question man. And what I mean by that is you ask more than you tell. You ask to gain insight and information rather than telling someone how to be, how to feel, how to do something. You let them bring out the answers in themselves by asking such questions as, why do you think that is? Who told you that? And so on. Again, I'm kind of back to like, how do you get to that place? Are you just curious by nature? Is it a tool that you found useful? How is it that you do that?
Now you have me thinking. I think I honestly, right out the gate, I think it's unconscious. I think curiosity is one of my values. Just it has always been one of my values since I was a child. I remember going back to my origin story. Like, my parents would make fun of me, or like my family would just kind of tease me. They just know that when the exterminator would come home to spray for rodents, I would ask her, "Hey, what is that? How are you doing that?" And then I would go and dress up to be like an exterminator and put I would makeshift like pack on my back with milk cartons, and just so I can be that too. I would go and I would just ask questions. I've always, ever since I was a little kid, and then I would go and I would try it. I just think that I'm just super fascinated with that. I think another thing as well is, I think because I have such a strong aversion for being seen as a know-it-all, I have a deep desire to help the person I'm working with, to help them realize the power's in them. You don't need me. You don't need this. You don't need what my job is to be here to help you see how great you are. You have the answers. And so a lot of times when we're done talking, I'll say, what was your big takeaway from this conversation? And the player will say, a lot of instances, the player will be like, I need to get back to focusing on what I can control. Principle. I need to get back to keeping the main thing. There's 2 principles. Okay, so what are you going to do about it? Okay, I'm going to show up. I'm going to make a checklist of all the things I need to take care of, and I'm going to do all of those things right before the game. I'm going to wake up in the morning, and I'm going to win the morning. I'm going to go work out, whatever. And then when it's all over, every time I say, who? That's awesome. Who said that in this conversation? Who told you to do that? And they said, me. I did. I'm the one who decided that. You're right. I didn't tell you to do that. You're the one who came to this answer. Just to show them that through a series of questions that we had, they were able to think out loud, and they were able to come to their own answers. And I think that's the big thing as well, just help them be self-sufficient, to realize that, hey, they have the power. There's one player who tells me all the time, he goes, Sue, I had a conversation with you today. We were in different states. We never talked, but he goes, I had a conversation with you. I was like, awesome. What did I say? He goes, you're asking me about what I can control. You're asking me about, and obviously he was having a conversation with me in his head, because we've had probably 200 conversations over the year, and just over and over. And he just knows my series of questions. And he goes, thanks, man. Thanks for our conversation today. And I just laugh. I tell him, like, this is hilarious. He goes, they help me. And so that's, I think, why I'm so curious, just because we just want to show them that they have the power and they have the answers. And I'm just a way to help them get there, accelerate the process.
So I'm curious now, that was there a know-it-all in your past? Was there somebody that claimed to be the answer person that you had an aversion to, and you say, I'm not going to be like that person? Did that ever come up? Is that what?
No, not that I can think of. I think it's just a combination of a lot of athletes and a lot of coaches and a lot of executives and a lot of people telling me a lot of their frustrations of, so-and-so is giving me advice, but they haven't even taken into consideration, like, my parents are telling me to do this, but they're not even considering this. My coach is telling me to do this, but he didn't ask me what I think. The coach is like, the GM told me to do this, but he's not even considering this. My wife or my husband told me I need to do this, but they're not even considering what I do. And so I've heard that over and over and over again, where we get in this advice mode, where we feel like I need to give advice to this person. When the reality is, I think it was Rick Rubin, he says, like, when we're giving advice, we're just giving advice from what we think works good for us. We're too emphatic, as opposed to saying, being more humble and saying, instead of telling people what to do, tell them what to consider. Hey, I would consider this. I would consider this. You're going to make your decision. You're going to decide what to do, but here are some things to consider. If you choose this, this might be the second and third order effects that could, maybe probability that it could lead to this, or what about this? And so I think it has been a culmination of a lot of pushback from athletes and players and coaches and people I work with, to tell me that it's refreshing to hear someone to, like, not tell them what to do. And I didn't realize, now you will get some people to say, don't ask me questions. What should I do? I get that. What should I do? Like, don't ask me, what do you think you should do? Like, what should I do? We got 30 seconds before I go hit. And then I'll just be like, hey, just take a deep breath. Okay, awesome. Thank you. And so there are moments where I'm reading the tea leaves And I'm like, okay, I just need to give them something. Another thing as well, the older, more experienced, more elite athletes and professional, we have these conversations. The younger athlete, the youth athlete, the minor leaguer, I could be a little bit more boom, like direct. Hey, go try this out. Now you might experience this, this, and this. It's a little bit more because they don't have the tool, they don't have the background that the elite ones have. They don't have the experience that a 40-year-old, a 34-year-old all-star has. They're just starting. They're just learning how to navigate their mind. They're just learning emotional regulation. And so they, instead of like a kid comes up to me, a 13-year-old, hey, how do I control my emotions? I'm not going to say, how do you think you should control your emotions? What's working? No, I'm not going to ask a teenager that. I'm going to say, hey, here are 3 things to help you, young buck. And so go try these. And I tell mom and dad, the way you respond to adversity is going to be the way your son or daughter responds to adversity. These are the tools I gave them. You need to practice these tools as well, because you can unravel everything we're working on because of your response. And so that's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah, it is. And we didn't even touch upon that, but maybe Justin will do this somewhere down the road. We'll have to do a volume 2 because I have so many more questions to ask, but I don't want to take any more of your time. You've allotted me a tremendous amount already, so I appreciate it. Now, given that we've got a couple minutes here, I definitely want to touch upon the 2 podcasts that you currently are producing and anything else that would benefit the listening audience. So what do you got for us?
No, I appreciate that. Yeah. So we have in 2014, I started a podcast called the Increase Your Impact Podcast. And the reason I started it, let's say we, but essentially it's me and my cell phone. The reason I started it is because I would get a lot of questions from parents saying, can you work with my son? Can you work with my daughter? And my heart says, yes, I want to, but my time says, no, I can't. I don't have the time to do that. You know what? Let's start a podcast for that demographic, for the moms and the dads and the kids and the executives and the people who don't have the money or don't have the time or I can't work with. Let me start a podcast for them. And it's 2 minutes, 2 to 3 minutes every episode. It's a short, very direct, each episode is a principle, as we talked about, and a strategy. And then there's a question in there on how to get better. They're short, they're to the point, and they derive from the conversation I'm having with elite athletes every day. I don't name drop. I don't say where I am or who I'm using these with, but you can be assured that these are conversations I'm having with the best in the world. And then the other podcast is called Digging Deep Podcast. And that's where it's Eric Hosmer, former All-Star, Golden Glove, and Peter Moylan, former Major League Baseball player. We're bringing on these elite athletes from different sports, and we're just having a conversation about leadership, about family, about resilience and confidence from their perspective, hearing their stories. And so that's a lot of fun as well. But pretty easy to get a hold of on social media at Justin Sua. And and also working on a new technology company, an app where it's essentially where you can have a process and development coach in your pocket, where you can talk to it. It talks to you, it asks you questions back, like where you say, hey, I'm struggling with my confidence. And it'll ask you, hey, where are you struggling? Very similar to this. And so we're about to launch that pretty soon. That should be a lot of fun.
That's exciting. Yeah. All right. Well, I'll make sure that all the links are in the description below. Justin, this has been a blast. I can't thank you enough.
Thanks a lot. Appreciate it, Rocky.
And that takes this episode to a close. Justin, man, thank you so much. As well, thank you to the Tampa Rays for allowing this to happen. What an amazing conversation. I'm going to play that back right now just so I can hear a few of those pearls of wisdom. Meanwhile, you're welcome to go back to our archives and find out all the other mental skills coaches that we have. We've got more in store for next week, too. So we'll look forward to seeing you then. Until then, make it a good one.